on the channel. My name's Tim, and I've decided to start this channel, or at least make some content, because I'm a owner of a 350Z track model. I've owned it for 11 years now, I think, and in that time I've done just about every mod under the sun, with the exception of doing any of the internals like rods and pistons, so still on the stock bottom end. But I sort of, as anybody familiar with the platform would know, chasing sort of power on NA with a 350 is, you hit a limit pretty quickly, and then it becomes very expensive to sort of hit that any further without forced induction. So to that end, I decided to go with a HKS Supercharger kit. And as much as I love the idea of twin turboing or even a single turbo, the kits are typically harder to come by and a bit more expensive in Australia. And especially if you're buying from the US, some of those kits are left-hand drive only, so you'd have to do some modifications in there anyway. On top of that, the other reason I didn't want to go with a turbo setup, particularly twin turbo, just because of the lack of room. So, cost of the components in the first place to install it, but then, I just feel like it would be a nightmare trying to troubleshoot any issues or, maintenance, if you don't have a lift, which I don't. So really for me, it was about the cost, quality of life for me, and then just sort of ease of installation. So at least with the Supercharger, I can do that here quite easily. Now, and I guess the main reason then that I wanted to make content for this particular situation is because there's just such a lack of content out there for the HKS Supercharger kits for 350s. Most of the videos you see out there for installations are for Vortex. They're very popular over in the States and here in Australia as well. There's a few people that seem to run them. I've gone with HKS because HKS, they're a great brand. I know it's going to be good quality, but it is a little bit of a leap of faith just because there's so little information out there. So I wanted to be able to document this process of installing it along with other components as well. Talking through sort of any of the issues that have hit. Get the thing tuned, what's involved, and then what it's like to live with. So I think there's a lot to cover off there that I know I would have been interested to see that, so I'm hoping somebody out there in the internet world would appreciate that too. Then I guess the follow-up to that, and it's maybe a bit preemptive, but eventually I do want to build a forged bottom end for this car as well. So that will come much later, but I'd like to also be able to document that transition of running stock bottom end and what it takes to get it working properly and what are those limits, and then what the difference is with a fully built motor, in years time, 2 years time, something like that. But anyway, so this is the beginning of it. I hope I do a decent job. Please forgive any of the unprofessionalism with the video sort of shooting and my documenting process. This is literally my first video. So without further ado, I'll get started and try and fill you in as we go along.
Just want to take the opportunity to bring you guys up to speed on some of the work that had been done to the car prior to installing the Supercharger kit. I've been upgrading it forever, and there's always something to do. So in this case, what began with a case of fixing an oil leak in the upper oil pan turned into a huge case of while I'm in there. And that started with me stripping the engine back to anywhere that used RTV, replaced the oil galleries, which didn't really need it. I also took the opportunity where I could to make some visual improvements, so I painted the front timing cover as well as the upper plenum. while I was waiting on the Supercharger kit, I figured why not install some cams. I chose these for my final power goals once the engine's built, but I was curious about how they'd run in the meantime. They of course needed the upgraded springs as well to be able to work properly. I also then added a Haltech dual wideband kit because the early Zs don't have wideband, and that's just handy for tuning, of course. New timing gear, and there was plenty of other things. Then of course, after 9 months of waiting, the kit finally arrived, and along with that I also purchased a set of GTR coils and 350X injectors. There's quite a bit I've done in terms of cleaning up the engine bay. You can see I've done resheathed the harnesses and things like that. I'm running an in-jet cold air intake, well, but since installing a quite tall, I can't remember how many rows off the top of my head, quite a tall oil cooler in the front, I could no longer fit the piping that would normally turn it into a cold air intake, so I've had to shorten it up, which means it's actually a hot air intake now, but that's soon to change. It's all new hoses everywhere. I'm running an ARC catch can I bought secondhand off someone. It's nice, but to be honest, I'd probably prefer to have a smaller, more tucked away one somewhere else. That's a future problem. Got a Motordyne 516 spacer, like everybody on the planet. Although I am switching over to an angled spacer. So I'll get to that during this install as well. What else? I've got oil, temp and pressure sensors that I've installed myself in here. So there's also a Mishimoto radiator. I have two new cam phaser solenoids, the VCT solenoids on the way. It's probably a tuning issue, but I've got a problem at the moment where they're not playing nice. So when this whole thing gets retuned, and these are going to have like some fine tuning with PID, I figured it's going to make more sense, given they're 20 years old, it's going to make more sense to just replace those with new hardware. That becomes the baseline for the tune itself. So you're not tuning to something that may have worn slightly over time or not performing as well as it could have over time. So I'd rather it be new hardware, and then you can tune as at the base. There's a couple of other things that I want to do before installing the kit as well. That's in addition to upgrading the injectors. It's going to have to happen with a Supercharger kit anyway. I'm also using GTR coils, so they're going to be upgraded. The other part is that I'm going to take the opportunity to make some adjustments to my plenum. So not just install the spacer, but I'm actually going to remove the either 4 or 5 of the supports that are inside the plenum, and I'll show you later. Anybody who's played around with Z plenums before already know what they look like. But I'm looking at removing at least these 4 supports and then having these welded up. So that just increases the volume on the inside, reduces, I guess, any sort of turbulence too. But I'm also going to look at sort of smoothing any of the casting imperfections, I should say, as well as opening up. So just port matching the lower plenum ports, and of course the so just the ports are doing port matching on it as well. So really sort of minor changes, but I thought while it's all apart, I might as well just sort of eke out those few extra little horsepowers that might be possible.